Hey everyone, welcome back to Daily Devotions with Pastor Peter. Today we are in Genesis chapter 26. As we see in Genesis chapter 26, the story continues on and it gets a little interesting. So we see how history repeats itself. This is what it says. A severe famine now struck the land and had happened before in Abraham's time. So Isaac moved to Gerar, where Abimelech, king of the Philistines, lived. The Lord appeared to Isaac and said, "Do not go down to Egypt, but do as I tell you. Live here as a foreigner in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. I hereby confirm that I will give all these lands to you and your descendants, just as I solemnly promised Abraham, your father. I will cause your descendants to become as numerous as the stars of the sky, and I will give them all these lands. And through your descendants, all of the nations of earth will be blessed. I will do this because Abraham listened to me and obeyed all my requirements, commands, decrees, and instructions." So Isaac stayed in Gerar. When the men who lived there asked Isaac about his wife, Rebekah, he said, "She is my sister." He was afraid to say, "She is my wife." He thought, "They will kill me to get her because she is so beautiful." But sometime later, Abimelech, king of Philistines, looked out his window and saw Isaac caressing Rebekah. Immediately, Abimelech called for Isaac and exclaimed, "She is obviously your wife. Why did you say she is my sister?" "Because I was afraid someone would kill me to get her from me," Isaac replied. "How can you do this to us?" Abimelech exclaimed. "One of my people might have easily have taken your wife and slept with her, and you would have made us guilty of great sin." Then Abimelech issued a public proclamation. "Anyone who touches this man or his wife will be put to death." When Isaac planted his crops that year, he harvested 100 times more grain than he planted, for the Lord blessed him. He became a very rich man, and his wealth continued to grow. He acquired so many flocks of sheep and goats, herds and cattle, and servants that the Philistines became jealous of him. So the Philistines filled up all of Isaac's well with dirt. These were wells that had been dug by the servant of his father Abraham. Finally, Abimelech ordered Isaac to leave the country, go somewhere else. He said, "For you have become too powerful for us." So Isaac moved away to the Gerar Valley, where he set up their tents and settled down. He reopened the wells his father had dug, which the Philistines had filled in Abraham's death. Isaac also restored the names Abraham had given them. Isaac's servant also dug the Gerar Valley and discovered a well of fresh water, but then the shepherds from Gerar came and claimed the spring. "This is our water," they said, and they argued over it with Isaac's herdmen. So Isaac named the well Esk, which means argument. Isaac's men then dug another well, but again there was a dispute over it, so Isaac named it Sitnath, which means hostility. Abandoning that one, Isaac moved on and dug another well. This time there was no dispute over it, so Isaac named the place Rehoboth, which means open space, for he said, "At last the Lord has created enough space for us to prosper in this land." From there, Isaac moved to Beersheba, where the Lord appeared to him on the night of his arrival. "I am the God of your father Abraham," he said. "Do not be afraid, for I am with you, and I will bless you. I will multiply your descendants, and they will be a great nation. I will do this because of my promise to Abraham, my servant." Then Isaac built an altar there and worshipped the Lord. He set up his camp at that place, and his servants dug another well. One day, King Abimelech came from Gerar with his advisor Huzath and also Phicol, his army commander. "Why have you come here?" Isaac asked. "You obviously hate me since you kicked me off your land." They replied, "We can plainly see that the Lord is with you, so we want to enter into a sworn treaty with you. Let's make a covenant. Swear that you will not harm us, just as we have never troubled you. We have always treated you well, and we sent you away from us in peace. And now look how the Lord has blessed you." So Isaac prepared a covenant feast to celebrate the treaty, and they ate and drank together. Early the next morning, they each took a solemn oath not to interfere with each other. Then Isaac sent them home again, and they left him in peace. That very day, Isaac's servant came and told him about a new well they had dug. "We found water," they exclaimed. So Isaac named the well Sheba, which means oath. And to this day, the town that grew up there is called Beersheba, which means well of oath. At the age of 40, Esau married 2 Hittite wives, Judith, and daughter of Beri, and Basemath, daughter of Elon. But Esau's wife made life miserable for Isaac and Rebekah. So as you can see here in Genesis, don't lie. Lying causes problems. And as we see here, Isaac did exactly what his father did. He lied to the leaders and those around him about his marital status. Don't say your wife is your sister. However pretty you think your wife is. Be honest. Be truthful. And that's the key thing about this story. And as we see Isaac, he has, what do you expect? he has the issues that it's come from his fathers, and it passed on from generation to generation. And the great thing about this is that Israel was supposed to be blessing all the nations of the earth. That was their call, to be a blessing. And the thing was, as you look into the history of Israel, they weren't necessarily a blessing to the world. They kind of didn't play with anybody else. So as we looked into the story of Isaac and his dealings, truthfulness is key, but resilience is also key too. See, Isaac knew that God was with him, and so when people kicked him around, he just continued doing what God called him to do, which is to live in that land. So he built a well here, built a well there, built a well everywhere, and eventually he got what it was his. Eventually he got the water that he needed. And eventually, as we see, they made a treaty. They wanted to make a treaty with him. And so as we look into this, we see that God is faithful. Sometimes we have to do things in our own strength and our own power, of course, but it's with the wisdom that God gives us, based on the truth and promise that he made to us. And if we hold on to his promises, then we are sure to be successful. But when we do things on our own accord, not with the promises in sight, that's when problems come. So even though Isaac was not a perfect person, we see that he was still a person who followed God. And that's the type of person that we need to be. People who worship God, who serve him, who make mistakes, however heart is in the right place. And I think Isaac learned his lesson too. And God blessed him. He acquired so many flocks and sheep. We see that in verse 14. They became so jealous of him. So Abimelech ordered Isaac to leave. And they moved away. And they built his wells. And so, taking the left cheek and the right cheek, if someone wants to punch you, you let them punch you. I guess that's kind of the lesson here, just to let it go. Let it go, like the song, kind of. But there's no point in creating conflict, especially when you know what's going on right now is just temporary. And I think that's one of the things we have to think about too. We sometimes think that what we are experiencing right now is going to be permanent, but the reality is it's temporary. Everything we have here is temporary. We live on this earth for less than 100 years, and then after that, where are we going to be? Eternity in heaven. So whatever happens here on earth, whatever beating we get, show love, because we know the love that we have from God and the hope we have in the future that we will be with him in heaven. That is the greatest blessing and reward we will ever receive. So when you're face to face with some challenges, 1, don't lie. 2, accept your fate, that one day you will be blessed beyond your understanding if you do God's will. And if people hate you, they don't like you, they give you a hard time, all right, move. See, when I was learning martial arts, I always thought that, learning martial arts, I could beat the other guy. And you learn how to hurt someone, you learn how to defend yourself. But the first thing you're supposed to do when you're in martial arts isn't to stand and fight. It's to run away. It's to run away. Avoid conflict. Avoid getting into situations where you will face conflict. Be aware of your situations. But when push comes to shove, literally, and you have to stand up and defend yourself, that's when martial arts comes out as a tool to be used to defend yourself so that you could escape. And the same thing here, too, in life. I think we see this in Isaac, is that, yes, there's no point in making conflict. There's so many other opportunities because God's blessing us. So think of it that way. Whatever you learn, standing up and fighting is the last thing we do. In the midst of that, look for other opportunities. All right, my friends, take care. Enjoy the rest of your day today. And may God bless you in everything you do. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.